We're gonna start. Haven't done this in a while. Probably gonna keep this in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Tens and Bagels podcast. This is the rebirth edition. As we are going to just reminisce a little bit about the year that has passed, and we'll try new things in the podcast if we could come alive back again in 2025. Follow us on Blue Sky. We're gonna talk more about this in the end of the episode, but for now we have the whole crew here. Start with Vansh, who was the first one who joined the podcast along with me. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride for us, Andre. Certainly the last 4 to 5 years, and obviously it's been a while since the three of us have actually done an episode together. Over 6 months now, so it's good to get the party back together, and we have a really fun topic that we can just kind of look back and talk about our favorite memories from, and so it's going to be great.
Yeah. How are you doing, Owen? The last edition.
Doing well.
Doing so much writing now in Canada, in other sports too, eh?
Yeah, well, a little bit, but yeah, it's always good to see you guys and talk to you guys, and it's sort of fitting that we're like unretiring to talk about like players who have retired, like be this maybe Nadal will like listen to this episode and be inspired to like make a comeback in 2025.
We're gonna do it like Djokovic and Harry Roger to come back. But yeah, and yeah, as you said, like there's a lot to reminisce about. Like 6 months ago when we last did a podcast, none of the things that we're going to talk about, actually maybe a few of these things happened, but a few of the bombshells that came 2025, 2024, just took place. A lot of things happened, and we're here to talk a little bit about them since it's been so long and we had time to break the news and just think through them. So yeah, I feel like the obvious gigantic news that we had to face this year has to do with a certain Rafael Nadal just leaving tennis, just taking another leg of the big three out of the picture. How did you guys feel about it? Like, what do you guys think about it? Like, do you guys feel like it's a decision that it makes you sad, or is it right, or is it like, do you guys feel like there was something more in the tank and he was just like saying, nope, that's it for me? Or how do you guys feel about that one?
Well, I'll go first. So I mean, for me, like honestly, I don't think there was any more Rafael Nadal could have given. Like he emptied the tank and then some, like more than twice. Because 2022, of course, was like when he came back and won 2 majors again, and like reestablished himself as like the dominant player in the first half of that year. But then we could really clearly like draw a line from the Wimbledon semifinal where he pulled out against Nick Kyrgios. From then on, you could just see it's just been injury after injury, bodies struggle to, get healthy again, and then he missed the entire 2023 season. So you kind of felt like the writing was on the wall when he announced the farewell, and I didn't think he would play past this year. And I think the big indication for him was going to be how does the clay court season go, and then we kind of saw that as like while he was scrapping through some good wins at the 250 level in Bastad, and he was getting a few matches in, and we saw a lot of sparks of what makes Rafa like the great player that he is, and he definitely had some fleeting moments, but just consistently week to week, his body wasn't holding up anymore. You could see also, post Olympics, when it took him a long time for him to make a decision, and then it became clear when he wasn't going to play the U.S. Open that the Davis Cup with his country in Spain is like the perfect send off. And I don't know if the send off itself was as spectacular and as memorable as Federer got at the Laver Cup, but I think that's a whole nother thing, because organizing it was always going to be tough in a team competition when you don't know if the team itself was going to advance. And it maybe would have been better if they had done it on a Friday or on a weekend, and it could have felt a little bit more special. But at the same time, I also think it was very fitting for Rafa, because I don't think he necessarily wanted all that fanfare, and he already got some really good moments during the clay swing, like in Rome, for example, when 15,000 people were under that bridge chanting his name, and even at the Olympics when he held up the torch. So obviously, the legacy of Nadal will like live forever. He's the clay goat, and so many of the epic matches that we talk about when we reminisce about the big three, I mean, they just couldn't have happened without Rafa. So he will definitely be missed. But at the same time, there's so many amazing highlights the last 20 years to look back on that will always make me smile.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. I process like tennis retirements in kind of a weird way. Like I agree with you, Vanch, that like when he came back late in 2022 after the rib injury or the ab injury, it was sort of like clear, like, okay, this is not the same player anymore. And then I think that that feeling like intensified in 2023. And so I think like that was kind of the point when I was like sad. Because like this past week when he's playing for the last time and everyone's talking about what they're gonna miss, for me, pretty much all of those things are sort of already gone, right? Because like, yeah, he still has the fighting spirit, but when he can't like hit the ball past the service line anymore, and just kind of like it's time, and I think he realized that. Like the Olympics match against Djokovic for me was a pretty sad watch, but besides that, I feel like once he not just declined, but like fell off a cliff, I kind of just like disassociated a little bit. And so yeah, like it was nice to see him get the love at Davis Cup. Screw Tennis Channel for like talking over his retirement speech. That was like an all-time bad move by them. But I think like on the whole, and kind of the same thing with Federer, like the previous like year and a half before multiple years before their retirements was just like so like injury filled and bad, and that I just sort of processed the retirement before it happened. And so Nadal's legacy to me is like many things. I think his catalog of like amazing matches surpasses any other players. Even though Djokovic has gotten to play Alcaraz more and sort of built his up that way, I think Nadal's like resume of all-time great matches is like the best of any ATP player probably ever. His career has been like personally meaningful to me as well. But as far as like the retirement itself, I was just kind of like, yeah, it's time. Like I didn't really feel any extreme emotions about it in the end, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, mm, I think for me it's a bit of the same in a sense. I feel like it's more surreal. It feels more surreal than Nadal is retiring this year as well than when Roger did. I feel like because Roger had like the whole pandemic situation to just kind of like, yeah, there's no chance he's coming back because now over 40, or like he comes back a little bit and then he did fairly well like in his retirement year. Like I feel like Federer did like on one knee. And to almost very nearly take a set off of her catch like back in the Wimbledon, and then obviously get bageled in the third. But I feel like for Rafa is this. I feel like I didn't really have the time to see Rafa playing back again, like in a level that just kind of felt like, because as you said, like he won two Grand Slams, he won two majors, and then he just kind of disappeared because of the injury, and then he never really came back. Like I don't know what happened. Maybe at that time, maybe after winning and then getting injured again, maybe he just kind of physically, but not necessarily mentally, he was maybe he was conflicted about like whether he should come back or not. Maybe he was feeling like, man, injured again. Like I was playing well, and he just probably felt like, well, this is probably gonna keep happening. And I don't know if he probably didn't train with the same I guess drive or motivation. Maybe I feel like he was conflicted in terms of like his training, because you don't just win two majors and then your level suddenly drops off of a cliff. I don't think so. Maybe it does. Maybe it does at Rafa's age and all of his history of injuries. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's definitely getting weird now. Like growing up, like watching all these guys doing so much and like playing so much. I feel like even more so, I guess, Rafa, because it was like closer to my generation of growing up. By the time that I started watching tennis, Federer was already like at the end of his dominance years, and Nadal was like at the start of his, and then Djokovic hadn't started yet. So, but he was like the good number three in the equation, and so yeah, I feel like for Rafa, it's just definitely going to be missed. And I feel like I wanted to mention this because like I read just recently in the circuit. I think you mentioned Ron Ricardo Phillips, which I just read this year, despite Owen having given me the book like 3 to 4 years ago. Uh, but he mentioned something really interesting. It's like in the life of a tennis player, you have kind of like two deaths in a sense. Like the first one is like when you retire, and that's really how he feels, because it's like, man, I know that he's obviously like alive and well. He's probably gonna live his life in ways better than I could ever possibly imagine for my own, as a gazillionaire in a private island in Spain or whatever. But I'm never gonna see him on court. It's just like he's not gonna break any more records. He's not gonna like win any more epic matches. He's not gonna like lose any more epic matches because of like a single like difference of a net touch or like a backhand down the line that went wide. It's just not gonna happen. It's really surreal to think like the Nadal that like was a presence of undefeatable bull. Like it never gives up. It just kind of like hanging up his racket, and time really did come. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely weird.
Yeah, and I should say, like, for me, I mean, personally, like, he played, like, I was one of those people in like 2014, 15 that I just couldn't see a way that he would play past like 32 or 33 max. So the fact that he comes back and wins like 8 majors in his 30s, and after that dry spell of like 2015 to 2016 to then like have 3 more years where he collects 2 majors, 2 majors, 2 majors, like that was pretty extraordinary. Like I'll always just remember the 2022 Australian Open comeback as like kind of like the moment that like just like a microcosm of his whole career in like one match.
That one made me cry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, Andre, like I feel like you make a good point about sort of like I don't know, the fact that like we're never gonna see him like do all these things again, and I feel like I don't know about you guys, but like at the French Open this year when he lost in the first round to Zverev, I feel like everyone had so much respect for Nadal that we all just sort of looked at that and we were like, that doesn't even count. Like that wasn't Nadal, you know, like yeah, his record is like 112-4 now, but I feel like it's still 112-3, right? Because it's like that last version just like was so different than all the other versions, and I feel like and I feel like that was maybe why I didn't it didn't affect me emotionally the way it might have if he had retired after winning the French Open in 2022. But I do think it's cool that everyone just kind of looked at that match and they're like, yeah, like let's all just collectively forget about it.
Yeah, and then also you had like Alcaraz watching it, Swiatek watching it, like Djokovic in the crowd. Like, you know, Djokovic is not going to be in a crowd to watch Rafael Nadal match if it wasn't the end, right? So it was definitely quite special. And yeah, maybe there'll be something down the road, like exhibitions or something later. But as far as competitive
Yeah,
tennis,
for sure. That's then. Yeah.
yeah.
What's you guys' like signature Nadal match?
Signature Nadal match. So many. I mean, I guess like 2008 Wimbledon, it would be my pick for like one of the matches that like really, I don't want to say kickstarted Nadal's legacy, but like it really kind of catapulted him from, clay go to like all-time legend, like I feel like it's the one match that I feel like would put him in the race for like greatest of all time, if you will. Like if he hadn't won that match, who knows what would have happened? Maybe he would never have gone on to win Wimbledon. Probably he would, in fact. But I feel like that match, winning against Federer, like the entire context surrounding it, even if it wasn't the greatest match of all time. Owen, I'm not trying to take this spot. I know which one you're gonna say, but I feel like that's the match that like I feel like it's in the history books. That I would say chances are that like if you talk to somebody who just barely knows tennis, they will have heard about this match. I feel like this was the one that like would have made like the most shockwaves.
Yeah. Without this match, it's quite possible I would never be where I am today, like working tennis or like be here on this podcast. So probably that's like the one that like if you're not a diehard fan, like about. So that's like for definitely has to be at the very top. But for me, I'm just gonna go with the 2022 Australian Open, mostly also because I watched Nadal really struggle to try to win the second Australian Open after playing those epic matches in 2009 against Verdasco and Federer. So for him to like, suffer that disappointment of that backhand down the line that he barely missed against Djokovic in 2012, and then the back injury that he didn't, he couldn't quite compete properly in 2014. He was up 3-1 in the fifth against Roger in 2017. So there were all these like disappointments, and he knew that he was thinking about it as the match went on. And obviously his reaction at the end, when afterwards he's like, when he lost the serve in the fifth set when he served it out the first time, he was like, F, this, and like you don't hear him Nadal, usually be so clear about what he's feeling in that moment and that sort of insecurity. But like that really, I think he was able to shake that off and just play magnificent at the end. And like the way he was able to just use every single tool that he had in the bag, despite not being in his physical very best, like 6 months away from the game and like 2 sets love down, 2-3 love 40, like one of the greatest comebacks ever in Grand Slam history, like without a question. So I'll probably choose that one. And it also made him the leader of like most majors for the first time. I see.
Yeah, and I was glad he got that moment, by the way, Vansh, because it kind of seemed like he might not. Like, Djokovic was going to be the first one to pass Federer, who had had the record for a long time. So, like, even though Djokovic ended up with it in the end, I'm glad Nadal did have like a 1 year period where like he was the guy at the top. I'm glad all three of the guys got to have that. And yeah, I feel like Nadal's legacy for me is like you can give like 12 different answers to this question that would all be like equally valid. Like for me, I'm gonna say like the 1-2 of the 2009 Australian Open semis and final. Like I feel like you're not going to be able to find a better highlight reel than Nadal in the match against Verdasco and the match against Federer, like the Djokovic in the 2012 Australian Open where he beat Murray and then Nadal. Like those matches are longer altogether, but they're not as good. Like the one against Verdasco is just like watching that is like being high. I feel like just like the angles and the intensity, just sort of like Verdasco hits 95 winners and still loses the match, and then the final against Federer, and it all goes in like tired and compromised from the semi, but still like it is like out dueling Federer on all the break points with his tactics, and is like hitting the backhand harder, and then I also do think the 2012 Australian Open is like the final. That loss is like it's so tragic. It's almost like literary. You know what I mean? It's like he's lost 6 in a row to Djokovic, and then in this one he overcomes his limits and like does all these things he's supposed to do, and then like still basically ends up losing anyway, like by his own hand. That missed backhand that I think we've now mentioned like 3 times on this episode. It's just like kind of amazing, and I feel like that loss would like break a lot of people. And instead, because it's Nadal, he goes on and beats Djokovic 6 out of the next 7 times they play, and wins the very next major. And like that match, I don't think is amazing because of like the quality necessarily. Like they make a bunch of errors. I think if it's in like the all-time great matches list, it's just because of how like long and exhausting it was, and not really because of forehands and backhands. But it's still just kind of surreal to watch. And I think it sums up Nadal pretty well. Like I think Nadal could like the testament to his fighting spirit, I feel like, is that he could lose in ways that still almost like enhanced his legacy. You know what I mean? Like that one and the 2018 Wimbledon semifinal. It's like he can lose matches, but in ways where you don't think any less of him because he played so well and he elevated it, like the event overall. I don't feel that way about a lot of other players.
Yeah.
And you know how Federer has that record of like he didn't retire in a single match like throughout his professional career. For Nadal, it's like he didn't break a single racket, like ever in professional match. I feel like that's going to be something that's going to be so hard to break, or like you can't really teach like that level of like self-control and like discipline and like everyone. I feel like it also goes back to the point like we always talk about like how great of a hard worker he is, like what a grinder he was, like how how amazing like physically the kind of things he was able to do on clay and stuff like that. But I feel like in a way that kind of does a disservice to him because he's also one of the most talented players of all time. Like he's also, a guy with like insanely good touch and feel, and like, some of his like skyhook smashes or like his baseline variety, like the way he would carve players up with his slice, and like, the kind of like the IQ that this guy had and like the intangibles that he could pull off, like his racket talent and just, some of the passing shots, some of those things like that he was able to do. I feel like is just like second to none. Like, you can teach those and you can learn them over time, but it's like you have to be so talented to pull those kind of shots.
I think that about the 2012 final, just one last moment that really stuck to me forever was how Nadal celebrated winning the fourth set. It was just like knees on the ground. He felt like he won the match. Like it was the intensity of that match was so high up, and I think that kind of like ties up with like the how Nadal displays his emotions on court. Like he never broke a racket, but like you would never say that Nadal is not like an emotional guy. He's definitely like he wears his heart on his sleeve, like no doubt. But like he just managed to find a way to just be able to like let out his emotions in such a way that like elevates his game and doesn't necessarily bring it down. Or is not just kind of like have a meltdown. Like I guess like the polar opposite would be like Medvedev. Like like he's really really emotional guy on court. Like he really lets a lot of things get the better of him instead of like Nadal. He just uses the opposite. Like make makes his emotion, get the best of his opponent. Like he just rises up, he's like fired up. And about like the touch that you mentioned, I feel like one of the greatest things that Nadal always used to do. And that was like my when I first started watching tennis, I never really appreciated it because I probably didn't understand the level of like technicality and talent that was needed for this. But like Nadal was like running like 6 meters behind the baseline and hitting those forehand passing shots. Um, a lot of guys are really, really fast and they get to like so many balls, but like Nadal like used to make those shots like from way over there. Like he was like, in the level 300, like, he was outside of the court almost like when he made like a few of these shots happen. And it's just like, you don't just do that. Like, you don't just do that because you're a good defender. You have to be special. Like there's no other way to do it, to say it even.
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys both brought up the passing shots because I feel like I think he's the best passer ever. And if and I feel like if you're a more recent tennis fan, you're gonna think like, what are you talking about? Like Djokovic is clearly better. And like that's fair to think because I feel like most of these shots that we're talking about Nadal hit more than like 10 years ago because it's actually been a while since he was at his athletic peak. Like I think you can argue his game got better in a lot of other ways, but like when you're just talking about like pure athleticism, Nadal was at his best like more than 15 years ago, probably even say 2005 to like maybe 2009. Then I feel like there's a 2% decline after that, and then after 2013, 2014, there's like a bigger drop off after that. But yeah, like some of he could pass you from anywhere on the court. It was nuts. Like the sharp angles he gets off either wing. Andre, it's a great point about there are a lot of guys I feel like Alex de Minaur or like Tommy Paul who like you said, great defenders, but like they're not going to hit those angles. Like they're going to get to like crazy balls, but if the opponent comes to net, they're just sort of going to hit it straight at them. And yeah, Nadal would just oh my God, it was crazy. Like someone this past week, someone sent me a clip of I feel like you guys all know which point I'm talking about. The 2014 Australian Open semi against Federer, and it's the second set, and Federer like comes in and hits these great volleys, and he hits one like behind Nadal, and Nadal like stops and slides and then like reaches behind him and just sort of like scoops this passing shot, and like Federer misses it. If you haven't seen it, it's 3-2, like 15-30 in the second set, but like it looks like Federer's won the point twice, and Nadal just kind of like sticks his arm out like off balance and just like, and Federer can't do anything with the ball. And I feel like that's an all-time, like you can see the opponent's soul like leaving their body moment.
Yeah. I love the you mentioned it because like one of the funnest thing like to see now is just like how the faces of disbelief. I think Djokovic had like so many of those like playing against Nadal, especially on clay, where he would just see like how hard he's trying, he's pushing, he's like hitting insane shots, and then he get past to the end. It's just like looking at his box like, I can't do anything. Like this is ridiculous. This isn't human. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, I feel like if someone's like new to tennis and they're wondering like how good was Nadal, like I know Djokovic is the GOAT. I feel like go look up Djokovic's record against Nadal on clay. Like Djokovic is like the greatest player of all time, and like he could not figure out a way to like consistently beat Nadal on clay. He was I think 9-20 against him overall, and 2-8 against him at the French Open. And so I feel like that's that might be the biggest testament to just like how good Nadal was on that surface.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we could just do a Nadal podcast alone, and it would just be insane. But of course,
we have 20 years of memories to talk about.
Yeah, and there will be other tributes down the road. But of course, we also had another Spanish legend retire on the WTA side, and that's Garbiñe Muguruza, who is a two-time major champion. She won the Roland Garros, she won Wimbledon, she won the year-end final. She was as high as number 3 in the world at the end of 2021. So quite an up and down career, really, really hard to predict. Definitely had those really memorable wins against the Williams sisters, and was even number 1 for a while. But what did you sort of make when she announced her retirement this year? Because that's another player where clearly if she had retired in 2021, she would have left on a high, similar to how Ash Barty did it. But of course, she gave herself the time. She took a proper break, came back from the tour, realized the desire wasn't the same, and then said goodbye, and we're left with some good memories from her.
Yeah, I feel like obviously tough to follow up like a huge Nadal like a tribute with all that, but like I feel like for Garbiñe is a different feeling. It's like um it's to be happy for a person to just be able to call it a career in that sense. It is like she's done everything that most players would dream of doing. Obviously, like not we should never be drawing comparisons to like the greatest, like Serena Williams, like Steffi Graf. But like to win 2 Grand Slams and having good records against even Serena and Venus, as you said, like I feel like it's a player that it's not that I'm not going to miss. It's just like I definitely didn't have like as much the strong feelings of like seeing the ins and outs of like the becoming of a greatest players of all time. As obviously like as I said, like with other guys and women. Um, but but at the same time, is that I'm happy that I was able to see her play, and I'm happy that I was able to see her win because yeah, as you said, like she was unpredictable and she was on fire. She had like great shots. She had amazing, matches. Even one that she lost that like I thought it was actually kind of a good one to remember. It was Australian Open against Sophia Kenin. It wasn't necessarily like wouldn't enter like greatest matches of all time, but like it just kind of shows a little bit of a tenacity also even from Kenin, like the things that she had to do. Nobody ever forgets like the game with like the 3 breakpoints saved on like 3 winners. Like that was part of like Garbiñe at her best, like she could be very, very dangerous and obviously like a winner. As we mentioned, like and as a fan and like seeing all the players out there and like getting more and more like into like challengers and the ITFs, she's done everything. She's had a dream career by any means imaginable. Like there's absolutely nothing that like you can say like, oh, you could have done more here or there. Like you win a Grand Slam, become #1, win the WTA finals. Even if she hadn't done 2 Grand Slams, you win a major, you're just like in history forever. I feel like that's like a dream come true for any player ever. So yeah, good on her for like finding a time to retire.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like as far as her career, it's like like incredible. Like Hall of Famer, 2 majors, like beat Serena in the final on one of them. So like yeah, that alone, like you should get into the Hall of Fame for that. And yeah, I think and like was part of some great matches, like the Kenin one, like you mentioned, the Osaka one at the Australian Open the next year, where she had match points against Osaka, who would eventually win that tournament. But kind of beyond that, I feel like she's just like a very healthy example for tennis players. Like, and Vanch, I like that you mentioned Vardy as well. It's like not everyone has to or even should want to try to be a goat. Like she, Muguruza is 31 years old. Like this retirement was coming for a long time, I think. I might be misremembering this, but I feel like someone posted one of her Instagram stories at some point where maybe someone asked her, like, are you coming back soon? And she just like posted a picture of herself by the pool or something like that. And so it's just like,
That did happen, yeah.
so healthy. Sorry about.
That did indeed happen. I remember that was a sign that
Yeah.
it's
And I kind of love that because it's like I feel like the mindset that we demand from like super talented players is like, oh, you should try to break all the records, and it's like, no, don't. Like that's gonna make you miserable. You should absolutely have other interests. Like once, like she achieved lifelong goals of winning a major, like scaled to these incredible heights, and then like also seems to be like a very well adjusted human being, and like got out of tennis presumably before it like wrecked her body, like it wrecked Del Potro's or like it wrecks Nadal's. Like Nadal, we talk about his fighting spirit, but like he also did some very unhealthy things, like playing through like injury and putting his foot to sleep to win the French Open. I feel like Muguruza would be able to look at something like that and be like, "It's not worth it, man. Like just relax. Life is good." And so I feel like obviously she didn't win as much as like the goats, but I feel like she's just a much better and healthier example for like most tennis players. Like if I were a tennis player who had a realistic chance of winning a major, I would aspire to have a career like that. Like achieve your dream, do it twice, and then just like, peace out whenever you feel like it. I think I feel like the grind is just not I feel like the way that the goats put up with it sort of distorts
Mhm.
how hard it really is, and I think someone like Muguruza is a much better example of like you can be a tennis champion and still have a happy life.
Yeah. And like when she was on, she was so explosive, so quick. I remember like she could hurt you just as equally off the forehand and the backhand. And she, her return, the swing volleys, I'll remember her for swing volleys for sure because, she would take a lot of time away from opponent, like really just flatten out both of her shots, go big down the line and then just come in, put away the swing volley. Like she had this intensity where you could clearly tell like, okay, she's locked in, she's motivated, she's hungry to win this match. And there were other tournaments where she would just kind of play like just with the week in and week out grind of the tour, but not really the same kind of 100% intention every single point, and she'd be the first to tell you that. But that's kind of that kind of lended itself to a lot of unpredictability, and and it wasn't like she needed the draw to open up for her or anything. Like when she did win those majors, it was she beat like the best players in the world at the time to do it. So, and I think she can be proud of the fact that at one point she was number one because that's not something that like only 27 other players in the WTA ever in history have done that. So for her to be number one at some point, win a big title on every surface, like you know, retired like you said at 29 or 30, and then just enjoy the rest of her life. Where I'm pretty sure she's going to be stay involved in tennis because she was working in WTA finals in Riyadh. So I'm sure like she's going to have some other goals like professionally. We might see her later down the road at some other spaces in tennis, and yeah, like it's definitely a great career.
Yeah. And another, I feel like if we said a lot of things about Garbiñe, and like, yeah, it's another great example I find of like a player that like kind of fits a bit of that spectrum of like winning a lot and being really good. Also retired this year. Angelique Kerber, uh, one of the greatest defenders of all time. I find like it was so hard to like put a ball past her. I feel like some of the most intense matches like we've watched in the WTA, like you just kind of hear in her voice how hard it was to do what she was doing, and it just the amazing shots that she's pulled. Yeah, what are you guys' impressions on her? Obviously, like she's a three-time Grand Slam champion, world number one. She's never won a WTA 1000 event, if I'm not mistaken. But honestly, like I mean, you would give all of those for one Grand Slam, let alone three, and more number one, I guess. So, yeah, it's just an amazing career again. Like another player that I was really glad to see playing at her best at the height of like baseline tennis. By the way, like it's just I feel like when people complaining about like courts slowing down, but I feel like that kind of like has its own you know dose of amazing stuff, like Kerber having like the grind of like the super baseline tennis, hugging the baseline as well, like those crouch shots, extremely flat shots as well, that should just kind of like guide back down the line or cross court for a passing shot. It's just some great talent out there. Like I mean, it's just amazing. And even I think I don't remember exactly what was the context of her retirement. I believe it was like the Olympics, correct? Yeah, and she lost to Zhang. It was a really, really solid match. So I really enjoyed watching that match a lot. So I almost kept thinking when you watch a match like this, you're thinking like, are you really gonna retire? You feel like you kinda have it in you for a little bit longer. But no, apparently that was it this time.
Yeah, no, I mean she's also someone who came back from giving birth and then posted some pretty decent results. Some in the first half of this year. When I say decent, I mean like like some runs that just like that were inspiring. Like I remember getting to the fourth or round of Indian Wells and like getting to the quarterfinals of the Olympics, like almost nearly beating the gold medalist. Like some of the passing shots she was hitting in that match were just out of this world, like just crazy. And like she saved every single one of them. They're like typical Angie style with like just insane like precision. Like that's why I always remember about her game is just like laser like accuracy because like you said, like those crouching shots, she was hitting some of those shots like so close to the lines as well, and like just using all the opponent's space in a way that was just like when she was on and she was just moving you left to right. I feel like there was just no way to like get out of that web. Well, unless you're like you just have like Serena level point ending power. It was like just really hard to like break out of that rut because like she didn't have the biggest serve, and like I've heard some people say like imagine if she had a really great serve, she would win like 5, 6, or 7 slams. But like I remember there were some times in 2016 where she would have to hit like second serves over and over again, but she was so good at like anticipating where the opponent was going to go on the third shot that instead of getting like a +1, she'd be in like a defensive position and then turn the rally around and then like just start like dominating you from the middle of the baseline. Like the opponents were so lost. They're like, how is this happening to me? I should be able to crush the second serve. But like they just couldn't put her away because she was incredibly fast, really good anticipation, really good defense. And she just had this like unbelievable like ability with like when she was hitting the backhand, like and she would stretch it out in the corners, the kind of angles she would find, it's like I don't know, the best comparison I could come up with is like Adrian Manarino, like on a fast indoor hard court. But like she did this on like slower hard courts too. And it was like and on grass and like even occasionally on clay, like we saw at the Olympics. So wow, like she's like somebody that like almost like overachieved. Like to think somebody like that won 3 majors is like a huge testament to like her unbelievable like resolve and like fighting spirit because that's insane. Like she's also a late bloomer as well. Like she didn't win her first major until 29 or so.
Yeah, and I feel like Vansh, like, not only did she not have, like, a massive serve, she didn't even really have easy power, so I feel like it's like, yeah, she knew she had to win all these points the hard way, and I feel like she might have more, like, iconic shots than, like, any other three-time major champion. Like, you have the forehand down the line and, like, the crouching backhand, or she's, like, basically, like, sitting on the ground, and the angles, yeah, like, like he talks about, you need like Serena level power to hit through for her. But like another player who beat Serena in a major final at the 2016 Australian Open, and which was just like an insanely good match too. Like that, it wasn't a bad version of Serena. It was like really high intensity, and Kerber like won that match with her defense. And I also think that kind of like Nadal, she's one of those players who her style just makes for really awesome matches. Like, I think her being so hard to hit through, like, brings the best out of their opponents because you know you can rally with her, so you're gonna, like, push your limits, and you're gonna try to defend as well as she does, and you're gonna try to find a way through, like, you know, this match, given what's happened with Halep since then, this match doesn't make me as excited as it used to. But I think the Australian Open semi between Simona Halep and Kerber in 2018 is one of the best matches of all time. If you haven't seen that, look it up or look up the third set. Like they're both saving match points and playing like 30-shot rallies. Like Kerber, she breaks to stay in the match with like a 26-shot rally that she ends with like a crazy cross-court backhand winner at, like, this angle, and it like, she has to, like, fall down to hit it. It's just, like, crazy stuff that I can't really describe. Um, and, yeah, I mean, I was watching the highlights of her Olympics match with, Qinwen right before we got on here, and, one of the match points she saved, it was like she's dominating the point, and Qinwen hits, like, this cross-court backhand that's, like, pretty good, and you're like, "Oh, crap," like, she's back in the point, and Kerber immediately just, like, swipes this cross-court forehand angle for a winner, and you're just like, "Where did that come from?" Like, that should have been one of, like, the harder shots of the rally, and she just hits a winner. Yeah, I feel like she's a very unique player stylistically, made for some really fun matches, and I agree with you, Andre, that, like, you watch her play at that level and you're like, "Is it too soon to retire?" But I don't think it is because, you know, you see what can happen with Rafa where, like, the dangers of playing on too long. So I think good for her, but yeah, I'm gonna miss her a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a you mentioned something interesting, like when you got into play like a player like this. I mean, if you ever play like recreational, you know, like moonballers and like pushers are like really awful to play against, especially like if you don't have the stamina. I feel like if you face this like at a pro level, it must be like that in an extreme. Like in a sense, like you obviously as a pro, like you have obviously more tools on your more skilled in your toolbox and whatnot. But like I feel like you really have to kind of go into a match like this either knowing that you're a good matchup because you know against her, or you just have to like tactically find a way because if you don't have the stamina, you're just going to not be able to make through the match. And I feel like a greatest example doesn't come necessarily from the WTA tour, but like who's gonna forget the point that Rublev won against Medvedev in the Australian Open in 2022? It was like a 49 shot rally or something like that.
21, I think.
21, yeah. Anyway, but it was extremely long, and Medvedev was like smiling at the end or something, and Rublev was like almost dying on court. Like he felt like he was playing like a 6 hour match, and he won the point, but he lost the match. And like I feel like it's that type of player. You have to figure it out and not have you can't play by their rules because otherwise you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the moon balls were I feel like she's like the worst player to play. I feel like the most frustrating player to play. If you're an opponent, just because you're like, I know I can win this, but it's like it's gonna be like the most miserable experience of my life. She's like a much more talented version of Sarah Sorribes-Tormo.
Oh,
They played an active match in Wimbledon in 2021 that you love to talk about. So
Yeah, man, how did I forget about 2021 Wimbledon? This is like another one of I think one of the best matches of all time, which is like a hipster take. But yeah, Kerber versus Sorribes-Tormo in like round 2 on some side court just played like the most amazing match. Because they both defend so well. They're having to hit like 5 winners each, and Kerber wins like 6-4 in the third. Go look up the extended highlights. It's pretty amazing, and
that was almost 4 hours, wasn't it?
yeah.
yeah, that's just a typical Sorribes-Tormo match. Then you add Kerber, and it's like, but it was like really high quality stuff. I did watch the extended highlights recently, and it was just sensational. It was like, man, like imagine having to play like that. It's just wild to think like some of the best tennis that she ended up playing for moments in the last 2 or 3 years, with all the breaks and like COVID and like coming back after giving birth, and it's just like that's another player who like just left like every ounce of their will on the court, and it's just like she could have like zero regrets when she retires. Maybe not winning a 1000, but she didn't come back close to winning any of those finals. There was one final she had against Andreescu, and Andreescu was just the best player that year for on hard courts.
Was this the drama queen hint?
Yeah, that was exactly the one. Yeah.
That was in Miami, but they played in the Indian Wells final.
Okay.
And that was another awesome match. But
Yeah. I agree with you that Kerber sort of. I feel like you could give that skill set to a lot of other players, and they would not have achieved what she did. And about the 1000 thing, like when you've won 3 majors, like I don't care. Like it's I feel like it's like skipping a mid-level job to become a CEO or something like that. It's like
exactly.
yeah, you got it better.
And then 2016, she finished that year #1. She made 2 majors. She won 2 majors. She also made the final of Wimbledon. Also made the final of the Olympics. Also made the final of the year-end championships final. So
What a season!
a really crazy year. Yeah, talking about like actually one of the more underrated, like low-key top 10 like best seasons of the century, because like
Yeah.
well, like apart from Roland Garros, like all the big events, she played amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I just have to shout out one more Kerber match. Like the year-end finals in I think 2012 against Azarenka. That's just like another crazy good match. Like I think Kerber, sort of like Nadal, Kerber's resume of like epic matches that she's been a part of. I think that's hard to beat by even players who were more successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess coming in like second to last in our list of retirees of this year that we're talking about today is the unfortunate case of Dominic Thiem. I didn't really want to put it this way, but it's just like a bit of a sad story, a la Del Potro as well. Like injuries just kind of stole a lot of his career away. But Dominic Thiem did a lot of stuff. Like when he was on, he was on. I was actually just watching this reel. I think it was on Instagram or was it on Blue Sky. It was Shapovalov and Kokinakis talking about how Federer like would make them look like juniors on the court, and Dominic was like kind of smiley, and then at the end he just kind of like comments about like, oh okay, like I'm just gonna play to his backhand like high loopy, and then he just lights around, and like people in the comments like, oh Dommy's so humble, like he didn't even mention that he has a positive record against Roger.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of the big takeaways of his legacy and career, right? How successful it was against each of the big 3, right? When 5 of his last 7 against both Djokovic and Federer, and then to have like he had multiple wins against Nadal on clay outside of the French Open, and then he also beat him twice on hard courts in 2020, and like won 5 tie breaks in a row against Nadal, and like one of the best ATP Finals matches, straight set performances I've ever seen in 2020. So like he had a really short peak 2019 and 2020, but like the amount of work that he had to do to get his hard court game, his clay court game, which was amazing, but it was kind of like a defensive posture, like 7, 8, 9 feet behind the baseline, super heavy, like unsustainably really, really aggressive. To like change that and like mold him into like a more like a faster court player was just like unbelievable to watch for like 2 years there, where like he was the most exciting player in men's tennis during those 2 years, like without question. Like some of the shots that he could pull off with the one-handed backhand and just like on his back foot, and also the also just like all the improvements that he made, like to his like game inside the baseline, because he was always really really good from way back. But then like the transition game, the serve, like everything like just improved so much. So it would have been amazing to see what it would have been like after he had won the first major. But I also think like that's the beauty of it as well, is like that first major just took so much out of him, like emotionally as well, and like physically, and he just couldn't get that forehand back. And that's unfortunately what happened like the last 4 years, where he was just a total shell of himself, because like the wrist, like just mentally, is probably the hardest injury to overcome, because you can always like you just, if you don't get that sensation back ever again, like you're not going to be the same player. And because he just was so full throttle, full intensity on that shot for his whole career, like when you lose 5 or 7% of that sting, yeah, you're just nowhere near where you were. So that's the unfortunate part about it. But
yeah, I mean, and when you look at what his forehand was like at its peak, you see why that wrist injury was so damaging. Because like I'm anti one-handed backhand, but this is not even part of that. His forehand, like, oh my god, his forehand was good from like especially like I'd say late 2018 to like the end of 2020. That guy could like, you could hit him like a pretty good cross court forehand, and he's gonna like hit a winner down the line from 5 feet behind the baseline. He can hit it so hard that he hits the ball like through the middle, and it's a winner. Like I mean, his biggest legacy is going for his shots, I think. Like I think Vansh said, like if you look at his matches, like again, he beat Djokovic back-to-back years in deciding set tie breaks in the World Tour finals by hitting extremely low percentage shots. He breaks Djokovic's 26 match win streak at the majors from 2018 to 2019 at the French Open in 2019. Hits a winner on match point. He just went for it. Like on a big point, he's not playing not to miss. He's playing to hit a 100-mile-an-hour forehand past you. I think in some ways he was sort of Alcaraz on big points before Alcaraz. Like he that was sort of revolutionary is a strong word, but I feel like before that, it's like the conventional wisdom with the big three was like have repeatable patterns that are so strong and impossible to disrupt that when you play them on big points, you're just going to win the big points. And Thiem is like, screw that. I'm going for the tiny target on the big points, which theoretically shouldn't work, but it did for him. 5-2 against Federer, and like 4 wins over Nadal on clay, I think. And then the sad part is that he's like a testament to how cruel tennis is, because he had like a really cool storyline developing with Nadal at the French Open, where he would lose to him every year but get a little closer. And I think everyone kind of assumed like eventually he's going to win one, like whether he has to play Nadal or not. And then this wrist thing happens, and like Nadal's telling him at the trophy presentation, like, you're going to win this tournament eventually, and like we all believed it, and then it just doesn't happen because of this wrist thing. I kind of think that sucks, and I think he should have a French Open title. Like, I think players who are worse than he was on clay will win the French Open in the future. But yeah, I think just one of the most fun players to watch, and I'm really glad he got that major, because I think if he didn't, that would be like one of the more tragic careers. That would be up there with like a Guillermo Coria type career if he didn't.
Yeah, not to mention who he beat in the final. But yeah, it was like one of the greatest story of like good and evil, and then it just kind of prevailing in the end. Not to get too political, but still, the one thing I find, like you guys just said, like everything, like it's just on the other spectrum of like a guy like a super defender like Kerber. You just get like a super attacker like Thiem, obviously like playing somewhat similar positions. It's interesting how Kerber would be like playing defensively on the baseline, and Thiem is like playing aggressively like from a defensive position. But it's just like, it's just like there's something special like when you see a player just like hitting the ball so damn hard. It is just, when you see like a few of those points, like when he played against Djokovic in those tiebreakers in the World Tour finals, just like it feels like he's hitting the ball harder and harder at every shot. It's like, how is it even possible? Djokovic is barely being able to get there, and he's not even hitting like super close to like the lines as well. Like at some point, he's just started like making like a larger target. It's like almost hitting like almost to the middle of the court. And Djokovic is barely like being able to get there. It's just insane hitting power. It's just insane firepower from like both wings, and I think it's just it definitely looks interesting. Like as in, I would say I have to admit that a one-handed backhand, when it's hit super well, it does look nice. It does look better than a two-handed. But I guess Dominic Thiem has like a different standard for a backhand. You know, so it's
Yeah, I mean, before Thiem, it wasn't possible to hit open stance with a one-hander
oh yeah, for sure. That was not a
behind the
thing.
baseline, you know, in a split step position. But like he actually could do that even when he was not in his prime. Like so, even if you watch him now and you'll watch his final match in Vienna, he can still pull off shots like that on the backhand.
Yeah.
Like still when he's at full stretch or when he's 10 feet behind the baseline, he can still hit a really awesome passing shot and then make you go like, oh wow, that's a throwback to 2019. But in reality, it's just, you know, it's like a shot that he had in the bag that the other one-handers I don't think will like ever got, you know? Like you usually had to stop and like stop, pause, and then like readjust your grip. And then you almost always had to come over it or slice it or like hit it with a close stance. But like he could actually like do it on the full run, full split step, and somehow get so much power behind it. It was just
Yeah.
it was wild. It didn't seem possible, like physically. And
No, yeah.
they're like teetering over.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I'm like a one-handed backhand detractor, but like Thiem, like he was one of those few guys whose one-handed backhand like wasn't overrated. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it was a legitimately good backhand, like independent of being a one-handed backhand. Like you see guys like Tsitsipas or
And
Shep.
he got a lot better like with the slice as well, and like defensively, like that was a huge component because he always used to take like really, really big swings.
Yeah.
Like once he got that part figured out, and then when he could get his forehand into play, like it was game over.
Yeah. Like again, it was like a good backhand, and yeah, I mean the hitting down the middle and like still making the opponent defend thing. Like you guys will remember this point too. 2019 ATP Finals against Djokovic. He's serving for the second set, 5-3, 30-15, and he's like hitting the ball at full pace down the middle of the court and like making Djokovic like slide to defend. And then Thiem just like slides into this forehand down the line that like isn't that close of lines and it just blows past Djokovic. And I think Thiem has talked about the shot like in like press. And he said something like, yeah, that shot would go in like 1% of the time, but I had to try it because it was Djokovic. And it just and yeah, he hits it perfectly. And that was one of the ones I think made Djokovic just like look and go like that, you know, where and not even in the ironic way, whereas sometimes bitch like, you know, he gets that look where he's just like genuinely frustrated at how good his opponent is. And yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, Thiem, like another story, like it couldn't definitely did the major US Open. I feel like he did have like the ATP finals in him. Maybe, you know, just couldn't handle a few of the pressure, or like maybe already had played too much. But yeah, another career that
Both his big titles came on hard court, right? Indian Wells and
exactly.
also
Yeah, it's a crime that he doesn't have an ATP finals though, Andre, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like, and I wouldn't say this most of the time, I feel like 2019 and 2020, he was like the player of the tournament, even though he didn't win it, if that makes sense. Just
for
because
sure.
of like the things he did, like beating Djokovic and Nadal in 2020, even though Medvedev did that too, Thiem did it better. Okay, I'm done, sorry.
The team did it like in a very flashy way, if you will. Like it's just shots as just incredible.
and improbable. Like not 4 down in that 2020
Yeah.
ATP finals, semifinals. He wins 7 of the last 8 points. I could watch that on repeat forever. Like those, yeah, those 4 winners or something that he hit in that stretch was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of like Alcaraz before Alcaraz, right? Because I feel like the only thing since then that's similar is like what Alcaraz did to Sinner in Beijing.
Beijing,
He's down 3-0 and then just like explodes and wins every point.
yeah.
Yeah. And I guess last in our list of retirees this year, another player who suffered a huge injury, came back and gave us some surprisingly interesting matches, like very epic matches, very emotional moments on court. We have Andy Murray, who's finally called it a career. Came back after huge resurfacing and surgery on his hip. Won a title against a fellow comeback player, Stan Wawrinka in Antwerp. And then after that, he won a couple challengers, made a few finals. Never really got to the level that he needed to. A few things were missing in his arsenal. Like I feel like not having the firepower hurt him a lot in his comeback seasons. But yeah, his career also an insanely great career, second to pretty much only the big three his time. Like it was the saying was that there was the big three and Andy Murray, and then everyone else is just before he was the big four, but then he kind of like made a bit of a distance. But then like I feel like Andy Murray standing in his own category, like it's pretty fair. Seriously. So yeah, what do you guys say about his career and his retirement?
It was so iconic in many ways because, I mean, obviously we know everything that he achieved alongside the big three from, winning from the struggle to win his first major, and then, the I am closer moment in 2012 against Federer at Wimbledon, and then winning the Olympics, winning the US Open, nearly winning, coming so close to the Australian Open, only losing out to Djokovic in 4 finals. And like obviously, like all the accolades were there, and then double Olympic gold and all of that. But then he retired in 2019. So he retires in 2019. It seems impossible that he's ever going to come back because with the metal hip, plus also several doctors telling him there's just no way, no chance. You have a metal hip that's setting off detectors at the airport. Are you going to come back and, compete with some of the best players in the world? And to his credit, he did manage to get back inside the top 50. He did play a lot of challengers, win a lot of them. I think he won 3 in just 2023 alone. And like he managed to get to a point where he almost got seeded in the majors. Like he made a few third round appearances. He gave us like those epic matches in 2023 Australian Open when it was a pretty dire men's tournament, but Andy Murray kind of saved it. I'll always remember that. Like, those
Yeah, he was like the best
for me, Kanakis, like he really made that first week like epic. And it was all thanks to him. And then obviously on grass, he was still so dangerous with like his IQ and his just unbelievable like some of the occasionally he would still show us like what made him that unbelievable like mover and anticipator, and like the kind of qualities that he had to survive because he was always more reliant on his movement than the other three. But I think ultimately he just couldn't adjust his game enough, for like today's standards to be like that ultra aggressive version that the big three were able to do. And I guess a lot of that is limitations with his hip, but also just like a mindset thing. Like there's just no way he could like get that back. And I don't think he really could do that much about it. Like he gave it absolutely everything he could. And it became clear like this year, early part of the year that it was going to happen at Wimbledon or the Olympics. But I'm glad he got that really good send off at the Olympics because he got to do it. He's like the Olympics GOAT, right? Because he's the only one with the 2 Olympic singles. And then, yeah, he did it with his good friend Dan Evans, and they had those epic comebacks, and then eventually they lost in the quarters. But it was just, yeah, it was one of those careers where like you just don't know what he's gonna do next, and we'll talk about that because yeah, there's more to that. But I mean, just like what a character, right? Like I don't think we appreciated just how funny he was when he first came on the scene, and like just I remember kind of okay, I'll say this, like 2009 to 2011, I didn't get him at all. I thought he was very dire.
Yeah.
Very just sad looking. I'm like, why is he always moaning and complaining on the court? Like you're winning, like you're like 4 in the world. Why are you just moping like after every single point? I didn't get it. I just didn't understand him as a person. But then like that moment that he cried in that, Wimbledon finals, and like, he was, and then I kind of understood like, okay, the pressure that he's under, like with his country and like the whole drought since Fred Perry, and like just how difficult it must be like emotionally to like come so close so many times. Like the fact that he like showed his emotions in that way like really won so many people over, including myself. And then I remember being so happy for him when he won the Olympics, and like it was just like the weight was over and the pressure was just off his shoulder, and then he could enjoy his victories more afterwards. Even though I think actually that's probably one thing he regrets. He wishes he could have enjoyed his wins a bit more before that hip injury happened. And then obviously the insane comeback in 2016 when he was like 12,000 points behind Djokovic, who was like just dominating tennis for 2 years straight. And then for him to like come back and like just win absolutely everything in the pursuit to get to number 1.
Beat Djokovic in the final as well in the ATP finals that year to become number one.
To become number one. So it was one of the most epic finishes to a season like ever in history, and like one of the best seasons I've seen like start to finish for someone who only won one major. So that was amazing. Like there's gonna be so many memories from Andy Murray.
Yeah.
I'm like you, Vansh. Like I didn't like him at first. Like when the first tennis match I ever watched in full was an Andy Murray match. It was like, and it was when he was at his peak. It was he beat Wawrinka at the French Open in 2016. And I thought he was a whiner. I didn't really like his brand of tennis. He was just kind of like gruff and like he always seemed irritated, which like irritated me. But yeah, over time, like he did grow on me, and I feel like, and like this is partly out of love for our friends at Murray Musings. I feel like he just has the most like lovely fan base, and like I feel a non-toxic fan base. Like it is genuinely infectious watching those guys like root for him. Like I was at those Australian Open matches in 2023. The Berrettini one, Claire and I were both there, and then the Kokkinakis one I was there by myself, and yeah, I was just like full on rooting for him by the end, because it was just like, yeah, he just will not stop at anything to like win these points, and you do get like sucked along. It's hard to explain, but he does have sort of this like gritty magic about him that that you can't help but like get like charmed by. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot of new things to say about him, just because like, yeah, he's retired before, and in general he hasn't been his best self in a long time. Like I think kind of like Nadal, I sort of processed this before it happened, and so I just don't really have a lot of emotions now. But yeah, I mean I found him very frustrating to watch during his comeback because of what Vanch said, because he would always play the same way, and he would always get dragged into these marathons against guys who he was better than, and he would lose a lot of those matches. And I agree with you, Vanch. Like, I think it's fitting that he couldn't kind of have a second career with the level of success that the big three did. Like, sort of like their primes, he could live with them for a while, but in the end, he wasn't quite as good. And so I think it's fitting that sort of his comeback didn't have the same level of like his comeback didn't include winning like 8 more majors. But yeah, it was frustrating to see him like fight against himself, because he knew he needed to be more aggressive, and like his physically and mentally he just like could not do it. But I was really impressed that he just kept showing up anyway, because I would have stopped years and years before him. And yeah, I now have like genuine affection for him as a player, which I did not always have, and kind of didn't think I would ever have. So yeah, I really really respect the hell out of his career, and and again, yeah, I just think he has like the best fan base of maybe any ATP player. I think he's got like the least toxic fan base you can find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
If you have them all kind of arguing against each other, pitting one against the other, but with Andy, they're just like, yay, he's back on court. Let's go. You know, like, it was just amazing to watch in the social media era where the fans would just tear his way down, and Andy was just kind of on his island, on an island of his own, where you couldn't compare him to anybody else. And he was like amongst the mere mortals, he was a god, you know. So like,
I find that like Andy's fan base is more like, everybody was just, Andy's here, like he's so good, like, and you're singing praises about him, and then like somebody would come over like trying to draw comparisons about like the big three, and then like, pardon my French, but everybody was just like, yeah, but who gives a shit? Like, I mean, it's I don't give a crap like whether like he's as good as the big three or not. I just want to watch him play. Like, go play in your corner. Like, I don't give a crap for what you have to say. Let me just watch Andy, and it's just like that. I feel like, and I feel like he's such a relatable person on court. I feel like me as an amateur player, I feel like I'm more like Andy Murray than I am like any of the big three. I feel like I complain, and I look sad, I look frustrated, I look depleted, and most of the time I actually really am, because my stamina is garbage. But I can look at that player and just like see like you hit a shot that you're supposed to hit like 9 times out of 10, and then you miss it, and you're like, it is that kind of Andy Murray's really portrays exactly how frustrating tennis can be to any person who has ever picked up a racket before, and he does that at a professional level. He's a professional at showing us how much work you have to put in to play this sport.
Honestly, he was probably a nightmare to coach because because like you'd have to deal with all of the screaming that was coming your way, and like obviously he didn't mean it. You know, it was like a way for him to like vent and like, you know, like deal with like the frustrations like you so described. But like honestly, he had such a good tennis mind and like such an amazing IQ
Yeah,
that it's
for
like
sure.
you could see that he was gonna he was just like he loved to play like no matter what. Like so when he basically retired, it was like he just like physically he could not walk anymore. Like
Very much.
no matter what, like every possible level that he could do, to just like for him to go back to playing challengers when he has like that much success, it takes like a lot of it takes like someone with like, you know, a zero ego to do that. So like that's where I give him so much credit is like he like, you know, he could have just honestly he could have quit it like 3 years ago. But the fact that he just kept chasing and trying to just find that little something extra, like tinkering with his rackets, like finding the best edge that he could, like string technology wise, like with coaches, like he really like just gave it like every single possible wrinkle that he could to get better, and then eventually like he just, you know, couldn't do it anymore, and now he's gonna have a second career.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of coaching.
Oh yeah. Sorry, do you mind if I say one more quick?
Yeah, just go on to.
Yeah. I feel like he was like a relatable guy. Like well, like you said, Andre, like he gets frustrated. I feel like also one of the essential things about the Murray experience is like someone hits a drop shot against him and you hear Murray like groan as he starts to run for the ball. He's like, and it's like that's not that normal. He's kind of a normal looking dude. He doesn't look super graceful when he plays. It's all very like scratchy and like it's like obviously he is like supernaturally talented, but it's like it's the aesthetics of the way he plays like don't really reflect that. And I also just think like the way he was in press and the respect he had for women's tennis and like I feel like he would be the most fun of all the big four to like get a beer with.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
His sense of humor was gold as well. Like just, you know, some of the jokes he would make, or like some of the you know, like some of the tweets, like probably the best tweeter of any of them.
Some of the ways he would make Kim embarrassed in court. Like, why are you saying this?
Yeah. But yeah, like he loses a match and just tweets the word fuck. Like it's like I
When he retired, he's like, I never liked tennis anyway. It was 27 million impressions.
Sonic, iconic.
yeah, no one else could have pulled that off, I don't think.
No one else can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of coaching, bombastic news. I think if you guys do have time to talk about like bombshells in tennis, that's going to be definitely the first one. Andy Murray coming back to coach Novak Djokovic. Like, in which universe did you even expect to see this coming true? A 38-year-old Djokovic.
It's fan fiction. It's April
Yeah.
Fool's.
Yeah.
It's a typo. It's, you know, it's the stuff that you dream of. It's not like it's not reality, but it actually was, which is insane. Like to even say out loud that like Andy Murray is going to be coaching Djokovic like a week apart. Obviously, they go back to like 11 or 12. We all know the history, like all their epic matches. It's like just it's like outrageous to think. You know, he just retired 4 or 5 months ago, and now he's just, you know, gonna give this a go and like coach someone who took like 4 Australian Opens from him. Like it's pretty wild. Like you think of where Djokovic is at in his career, like just, you know, trying to get that, like find that little bit of extra boost and motivation, and like for him to like the announcement as well for them to like, you know, like do it on Instagram, and like Djokovic sends out like this really like well made video, and like it was just wild. Like I just like I'm still like actually still like processing it because I'm just so fascinated by what that's going to be like. Two tennis minds working together, like what they're going to try to cook up during the off season, and like what their actual matches will look like as well. The interactions between them, it's going to be insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like parroting your points, Vansh, but yeah, like it genuinely does feel like a joke. Like it's just, I feel like not even the conspiracy theorists would have like bothered like guessing that this was gonna happen. You know what I mean? And like to sort of be like a downer for a little bit, there is part of me that's like, man, Andy, you just got finished like being a full-time tennis player traveling the world for like 15, 20 years. Like, you don't even want to spend a year with your family full time before you like go jetting off or like not to speak for his family, but like I do wonder if they're like, come on, man, like you're gonna do this again already. But that said,
You can stay home with 4 kids for more than 4 months.
exactly, yeah,
Or they couldn't stay with her for more than 4 months.
yeah, like Kim is a soldier. But yeah, that said, I think it's a cool partnership because like Djokovic and Murray were such like similar players. So I feel like the conversations they'll be able to have of like, oh, like you hit your cross court backhand at like a 32.4-degree angle across the net or whatever. Like they're just gonna like know what that means and they're gonna be able to like communicate on a level and in a way that I feel like most coach player partnerships like would never be able to touch. I think that's cool. I'm curious how Murray's going to react when Djokovic like screams at him in the box. I feel like either he's not going to be able to take it at all, or he's going to be like, I subjected my coaches to this for so many years. Like I knew this was coming. I don't think it's going to like work miracles. Like I'm not going to say Djokovic is going to like win the Australian Open next year. Like because I feel like his main disadvantage right now is like stamina and basically being a 38-year-old man. And so I think like Murray can help him with his motivation, but I don't think there's a tactic that exists that's going to help him survive Sinner and in best of 5 or something like that. Although Sinner doesn't have great endurance either, so if he gets into a fit set, I might actually favor Djokovic. But you know what I mean. I just don't really you just don't really favor him to hold up in the same ways anymore. But I'm very curious to see how this goes. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like Djokovic is kind of getting ready for his own retirement, and he's just saying like, let's just he just literally won the one thing in his career that he seemed to want the most after, um like at that point, just like, what in my checklist haven't I checked yet? And like that's the one thing that like Olympics for Serbia is like gold medal. Like he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he didn't do it, and like he did it. And like for him, it almost feels like he's just like, dude, it's time to have fun. And it just calls up like, yo, I want to have like a friendship tour next year. And it's like just hanging out with his old friends and like just chilling out. Like no, it wouldn't even surprise me if he just like called up like Federer and Nadal to like watch him play like in some of the Grand Slams. It was like, having parties and whatnot. Just chilling out in that sense. If Federer called him back to the Laver Cup, I think he's showing up as well. Why not? And yeah, if he helps him just to kind of, I almost imagine like Djokovic yelling at his coach box and just anymore just getting up and just like yelling back at him or just like stuff like would be like hilarious to watch. I just am looking so forward, and I don't say this like lightly because I don't normally look forward to like social media posts, but I know there's gonna be so many cool stuff coming up like from Djokovic and Murray and like the training camps and like course and just then just like joking around. I'm fairly sure there's gonna be a lot of funny and just lighthearted stuff coming up in the future in their socials, and it's gonna break the internet maybe one last time for the big four. And but yeah, it's interesting to look forward to. But again, like tennis wise and like tactically wise, if you like you know sit down at a table and like thinking like tennis, like how do we do to win things, I think I'm with you, Owen. Like I'm not sure there's much to be done, and there's not much to be patched when Djokovic is a 38-year-old man. Who knows what else he's got left in the tank. Maybe he just really threw everything at the gold medal. I'm not sure like what else is left. We talked just now about Nadal winning two Grand Slams in the same season and then like falling off a cliff tennis wise and never really being able to climb it back. Maybe that's gonna be Djokovic next year, or maybe not. I will see. But like it's just really hard to tell at this point like what happens.
Yeah,
It makes Djokovic the most exciting storyline going into 2025.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, like you said already, all this stuff for the motivation and everything, and how like this magic ingredient of Andy Murray is not necessarily going to help him if his movement has indeed declined, or like if he actually can't find that Olympic gold level winning or 2023 level winning tennis again. But it's going to give us content gold, and we're going we're gonna see like I'm just so curious like what the practice sessions will be like what those 1 or 2 minute nuggets will be like kind of when we saw them coaching each other at the Laver Cup in 2022. It was mostly the other way around. I think Djokovic was coaching Andy then. But like I'm just curious to see like how do they game plan against Sinner and Alcaraz? Like what do they try to do differently? Because that's obviously the main thing if it does end up getting if Novak does end up reaching that stage. How does it look like tactically?
I hope Djokovic is in Carlos's half for the Australian Open and not Sinner's, because I think that I feel like Djokovic isn't going to beat Sinner again, at least not on a hard court. But I think with Alcaraz on a great day for Djokovic and a terrible day for Alcaraz, I think that result is still a tiny bit up in the air, even though I'd still kind of favor Alcaraz no matter what. But yeah, I mean, to put on my conspiracy hat for just a second, but like, if this is a PR move, like Djokovic is like, hey Andy, I'll pay you like X amount to just like say you're my coach and like travel with me to like 2 tournaments and then everyone in the world can love us. Like it's a pretty good idea. And the rest, like I feel like I don't think that's what it is, but if that is what it is, I think that would work very well. Like and it's weird enough news that I feel like there is a part of me that wonders like
I just want to know the details. Who asked whom? How did
yeah,
did they meet each other in person? Was there a phone call? Was there a
right.
did their wives get in touch? Like what was the deal here? How did this get cooked up?
Yeah, let's get an oral history of Andy
Yeah.
Djokovic's coach. Yeah.
I mean, if anyone does have like each other's like personal phone number, it's definitely Djokovic and Murray. They surely have like a direct line to each other. Something happened along the way. Maybe they just like met up for pizza at some point. Djokovic just like throw the bomb, the half jokingly, and then Murray's like, you know what, it's actually really cool. Let's actually do that. And I was like, yeah, you know, like when you have like a couple of friends and you have like the craziest idea, like realize that I actually can do this. It's the vibe that it gets, man. Like that's I totally get the PR move vibe that you're getting out of this, because that's literally what it looks like. I had like to scroll through like several tweets saying that Murray is coaching Djokovic, and then to actually finally land on like sources that I would say are credible, even though they were basically all retweeting the same thing. But I just kind of had to like go back and like seeing that this is actually not a joke. This is actually real. So yeah, it's unreal. Like I mean, for me, it's like I'm speechless, really.
Only confirmed to the end of the Australian Open so far. So we'll see how it goes afterwards.
Yeah, Djokovic is gonna lose Popper again and then fire Murray. No, I mean maybe honestly, Popper like So I asked Vansh this like half jokingly. If Djokovic played Popper at the Australian Open again, who would you favor?
Yeah.
Djokovic, I'd say.
I'd still pick Djokovic only because look, like Djokovic had the worst serving match of his career, since 2010. So that would be
fair enough.
That would be the reason I would go for him. And also Popper was just kind of riding that high as well from this summer and winning Canada but they did have some really good matches in Wimbledon and Australia. But even though Popper didn't win those last year, so.
Yeah, I mean, Popperin had points for 2-1 in Australia. Like, I don't know. I agree with you guys that you have to favor Novak, but it feels more like a 65-35 kind of thing now. Right? Like,
this would be a match that you'd want to tune in, and there'd be jeopardy for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, so I guess that marks it. I feel like it's getting pretty late now for us, but we definitely should get back together and discuss like more of these weird ass bombshell that we were getting like around like the tennis tour, like maybe rank our top 5 or 10. I'm not sure if Owen wants to include Muratoglu anywhere in that list, but
oh wow, that's a whole other. He could have his own.
He could have his own top 5 Muratoglu moments. Not that we want to give as much publicity as he gives himself already, but still, this is Tennis and Bagel irreverent in its own way. We are going to find a new consistency to the show. It's not going to be, we're not going to try to do it weekly as we were doing or trying to do before. Yeah, we're going to try to like be refreshed for 2025 and enjoying tennis as always. And you can always find us in our usual social media accounts. Do try to find us now on Blue Sky. I do not know your handles. I don't even know mine. So you're just going to find them in the links. But if you guys want to shout out your own so that people know how to follow you.
I mean, mine is just the same as my Twitter at Vansh2K with all the blue sky social stuff at the end. But you should be if you're
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm Owen Sports. I kills Tennis Nation because as Andre said at the very start, I am trying to write about some other things as well now. And yeah, I killed my Twitter account after the election because I got so mad at Elon. So yeah, I'm never gonna be on there again.
Yeah. And I'm basically only there for, seeing stuff. So I'm probably not going to be tweeting not nearly as much or if ever. And as of right now, as I'm speaking, we don't have a Tennis and Bagels account, so I cannot really give you a handle that doesn't exist yet. But there will be one by the time that this episode come out. So check it out in the links, and do give us a follow as well in there. I will still post this one on the Tennis and Bagels Twitter account so that people know that we are on Blue Sky. But yeah. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks again, Vansh and Owen, for joining me against in this fabulous talk about our memories as we come back 6 months later.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and time just totally flies by when you're reminiscing all-time greats.
All right, so see you guys around, and see you next time. Bye.